you to the directors and, of course, the actors. I think they really deserve a real big So this was a truly, truly impressive. This was the world premiere.
The world premiere presentation at the Siegel Center.
And the company started this morning at around 9 or 10 o'clock, rehearsed all day. And it is a very, very beginning, but I think it is a truly a strong place. They are powerful, and they really look at many, many facets of it from many, many sides. But first, let's show the two directors. Where are they? Here they sit right here. And before we come to the playwright, maybe we start with you, then you, but just because you sit here. And tell us, what does this project mean to you? You have to take the mic. Yeah, we are recording it.
Why? Hi, I'm Camila Forbes. This project, it's funny because as a director, you get asked to work on a play, right, and bring a play to life. And to me, this was more than just a play. This was a conversation for me in which I have been involved with in my community, my family and friends, about race, class, privilege, and particularly even sparked even more, ignited even more after the Trayvon Martin incident. So it was far more of igniting and sparking a conversation for me. So it's really important work. So thank you, Keith, for the opportunity to.
Ira, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe say which plays you directed.
My name is Ira Kip, and I directed Some Other Kid and the ballad for George Zimmerman. Keith asked me to be part of this project, and like Camila says, you get asked to do work. And for me, I was asked, and I was kind of like, sure, I'll jump on board. But as I got closer to today, it really started to hit me how important this work is. And as I was expressing to the group this morning, today being December 5th, is actually in this spirit that we're working on here in this play. I'm from Amsterdam, and we're actually celebrating a holiday today, which is Sinterklaas and Black Pete. So to then, knowing that that is happening back home and then working on this today, it's very interesting for me that's the energy that I find myself in right now. But this has been really, really great to be part of this.
Yeah, thank you. Keith, we come to you a little bit later. Maybe you take his mic, hold it a bit closer so we can hear you for recording purposes also. Maybe you shortly introduce yourself and say which play you did, and tell us a bit about the idea, what sparkled your...
My name is Russel G Jones.
Russell, a bit closer.
Hey, my name is Russel G Jones. I did not act in or write or direct any of these plays, but Keith and I have been talking about this type of conversation, and as an artist, as an actor, I started this impulse called The Blind Spot, which is basically trying to promote the necessity for conversations around race, identity, and privilege, and to promote the idea that the artist has a responsibility to give something back to their community. And so Keith asked me to be on the panel here, and I'm honored to be here amongst all of you talented and driven artists.
So maybe then say, so what do you think about the project?
I think I guess the most beautiful thing about the project is that this room is filled, and there were people outside who couldn't get in. And as disgusting and revealing as the whole Trayvon Martin Zimmerman thing was and is, it also illuminated the fact that many of us are ready to have these conversations and see the importance of this type of work, and there's plenty of room for the artists to engage in this type of work. And that's what my predominant thought was, being in the back of the house watching what was happening.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe the question then to you about the artwork, about the play.
I'm Tala Manassah. I wrote Dressing with Mona Mansour. I guess, when Keith Keith called Mona up and asked her if she wanted to do this project, and she called me up and she said, "Do you want to do it?" And both of us immediately said yes. And shortly thereafter, I realized that I'd signed up for writing, I think, probably the hardest thing that I've ever written. My primary identity in the world is as an educator, and I work here in New York City in about 100 schools a year through an organization called Morningside Center for Teaching Social Responsibility. And I think that the Trayvon incident resonated for me because those are our kids, those are my kids, right? You know, when I walk into a classroom, there are 15 Trayvons. And I think I wanted to work on this project because I wanted to have a say in how we think about children and what our responsibility is to them and what it means when a kid can be shot, right, and nobody is held responsible. What does that mean? What does that mean for all of us? What does it mean when we have whole communities for whom it is almost an eventuality, right, that some of our young people will die, will be killed, and nobody is held responsible? What does that mean? So I think I can stop. I can stop. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, I don't know if I'm on. This one's on. This one's on? Am I on? Okay. Hi, I'm Mona Mansour, and I co-wrote the piece with Tala. And it's so weird. There's like an extra. It's like
Ignore it. Just ignore it. But it works.
reminds me of Star Trek. It's off. Is it off? Am I on? I'm on. I'm sorry. Okay. I was in a group with Keith and Rey Pamatmat at the Lark. We were in a group called the Monthly Meeting of the Minds, and I always loved what Keith brought in, and of course hoped that he liked what I brought in. And I was working on a play about a Palestinian academic in London in '82, and along the way, it was very interesting to sort of get Keith's perspective on my character, who is, you know, in this world, but, you know, where he's sort of bridging these two worlds and so on. So that's how I met Keith, and he asked me to do this, and I checked in with Tala because of what you just heard her talk about. I knew that it would be a beautiful thing for us to work on this, and it was terrifying to work on, absolutely. It was definitely the hardest thing that I've ever written. And I will just say that, you know, the small amount of rehearsal I had this morning was so meaningful to sit with Camila and the cast and just have a conversation. And it really is why I do theater, you know, because we all know it's not for the money. But, you know, it's like being in a room with people and letting them be with people that you've created, and then having this sometimes really uncomfortable conversation. That is what it's about for me. So that's what I want to say.
This will work. Hi, everyone. I'm Dominique Morisseau, and I wrote Night Vision. So I think I'm gonna echo everyone up here, so I won't, about the why. I think it's the why is pretty much why everybody else is in this room, which is just the urgency of this. But I will say, when Keith reached out, I was like, oh shit, I knew he was gonna do that. You know, because I knew that he was going to come up with something, you know? That's the kind of the leader that he is. And I was hoping, because if not, then I was gonna try to do something, or find somebody else who was gonna try to do something, you know? As I think we were all itching to be active and figure out what our role is as artists to be active, and how can we as writers be active, and, you know, and the active can keep going, you know, it don't have to stop with this, but I think this is definitely for me the beginning of how I could first figure out what to do, you know. A Facebook status wasn't gonna cover it, you know, or 30 of them, which I think I did, you know, but it was like, what else? So that was that, and then I think, yes, it was also very terrifying, because you're like, okay, so, everybody gonna be looking at what you gonna say, you know? What are you gonna say that is different than what anyone else can say, or maybe it's not. And that's what I've found tonight, because this was my first time seeing it. I didn't get to see it before, so And I wasn't in the rehearsal, but thank God for Camilla Forbes, because she's who directed my piece. Because, yeah, I mean.
Both of them, yeah.
Thank God for Ida Kip, too. Thank God for Ida and Camila, but I know that these women can understand the language and the stories that we're telling, and I knew they would bring integrity without being here, so that was a gift. But I also just think, from my story, I just said, okay, well, I'm not going to tell theirs again because I know these writers, we're all going to have something very similar going on. But I said there is an incident that has stuck with me that happened to me in Brooklyn. With my now husband, then boyfriend, when we saw an event very similar to what was described in the play. And I remember when I got on the phone, my husband had just been stopped and frisked not too many times sooner than when this event happened. And I remember when I called the police, like, what should we do? I'm gonna call the cops. And I remember when I tried to call the police and I started describing and he stopped me. And I was like, what? You know, I remember at the end of it, I felt like I had just described my boyfriend. And I was like, oh my God, he already was harassed before like this, and then he was violated. And I remember thinking, shit. And all I could say into the phone was, get the right black guy, and hung up, you know. I don't know what they're gonna do with that. You know, but I remember that's the terror. That I know what I too, as a sister, am also indicting my brothers just by being unclear, you know, and that is, how am I a part of that? I don't, you know, how I get a part of that. That's what I wanted to explore, so, yeah.
Marcus?
My name is Marcus Garley. Ooh, I hear myself. My name is Marcus Garley. Thank you all so much for coming out. I wrote No Monsters Here, which was the last piece that you all saw. And I'm very, very excited to be a part on this panel, but also to be a part of this festival. I was doing a show in Atlanta when the verdict came out, and the play was about lynched black men. And I had to do a talk back right after hearing the verdict. And I couldn't do the talk back. And me and the artistic director got into a bit of heated discussion because people came because I was gonna talk about the play and they really liked the play, and I couldn't talk. I really couldn't find the words. There were some words, but they didn't wanna hear those words. And nobody wanted to hear those words, and I didn't want to say those words, and so I said I needed to find a way to talk about this through the art form of playwriting, which is the way I speak to the world. And not soon after that, Keith sent me a lovely email and asked me to be a part, and it was great, and I literally stopped all of the other projects that I had to do, and I said, I've been waiting. And that coupled with an experience I had in Berkeley where I was working on a community project about race and class and gender, and I was walking home from a friend's play, and I was stopped with guns drawn and lights and made to, you know, be on the ground, and they said I fit the description of a rapist. And the first time in my body I felt this, it's no way to describe it, there are no words. God hasn't given us words to describe that. You can see my hand shaking, but I felt that anger, and I said, okay, this is a moment to write about. And it really struck me when I talked to my cousins who live in a very, what they would call a very violent neighborhood, and they started to laugh when I told them the story because this is me. This is how I present myself in the world, and they present themselves in a very different way. And they say, you know, they call me cuz this happens every day to us. And you were there and see, and so I said, okay, I found a way to talk about this through humor because they were laughing. And the edge of humor and how when it slips, because we laugh and cry with the same muscle. So when it slips and the truth comes out, people who try to avoid the truth because of you been laughing, it smacks you across the face. And so this has been really an experiment for me to really toy with that notion of humor and also political satire and violence. Thank you.
I write for all the reasons you just heard, so there's not much else to say on that. You know, I mean, I love Keith, so if Keith had said, do you want to get together and mow the lawn? I would have said, yes, I'll be there. I will get the lawnmower. So, you know, there's just love there. I was worried that I didn't deserve the spot, and so I felt a lot of pressure about that. And I must have, this for me was also the hardest thing I've ever written. I rewrote, there were many versions before we got to, I forgot to say my name, I forgot all of it. Winter. My name is Keith Adkins. My name is Winter Miller. My piece was Colored, the one on the subway. And I felt kind of crushed by what could I possibly say, and how would I say it in 10 minutes, and all of that stuff. And then I just got out of my way and asked for help and got into it. But the eventual thing came from, I was on a subway platform, and just as I had arrived, there was a black woman who was, cursing out this guy, and it was along the lines of, put your penis away. And I was like, so I just stood next to her. I just stood there and was like, whatever, like this body right here has your back. Whatever's happening, I'm with you. And then we got on the train, and I just sat near her, like I kept the whole time, like, I wanted to say, there was so much I wanted to say, but I was afraid. And so there was this other woman who was next to me, and we ended up talking. But I had a whole long conversation in my head with this woman about, what did it mean to you that this man was black? Because I thought about, if a white man did it, I'd be like, just what an asshole. But it wouldn't affect, in the way that if you call me a cracker, I might laugh. So it doesn't have the same weight. So I wanted to explore what that dynamic of privilege is, where when one thing represents something else. And I ended up using colors so that it could be, you could project onto it whatever you thought that it might be. And I was surprised when I came to the rehearsal and blue and also blue were white. And I was like, oh, okay. That's what I asked for. So it's the privilege to be part of this dialogue and to have all of you here, and there's nothing better than this.
I think we're going to come to audience questions right away. You were really, it's a great audience, as everybody said. Thank you again all for coming and taking time out of your life to be part of it. But my question before coming to you goes to Keith. You had the idea, you asked for the plays came, you read them, now you saw them. How does it feel? Is it different? Is it what you expected?
It is exactly what I expected. I think, one, I'm very much interested in social justice without wearing it on my sleeve. It's just part of my nature. I grew up in a family that talked about social justice issues, and I don't think they realized they were talking about it. And I was one of the few people in my family who actually moved into a higher education and found language to sort of figure out the narrative that was constantly sort of going on in my family. And so I feel like I'm attracted to other people who I feel exude or express themselves in a political, social way. And so all of these people that I reached out to, I feel are family, even though some of them I haven't known as long as others. But it's just one of those, it's just kinetic, what's it, synergy or synergetic, whatever. And so I expected, even though I know some of them and most of them all kind of expressed how difficult this was. A few of them emailed me several times, like, I can't do this, why me? I was like, no, I think you can do it. But I was really interested, Frank, in each individual writer's perspective on Trayvon, race, or privilege. I didn't necessarily ask them to write about Trayvon, but just through their lens, I felt, an audience within their demographic or whoever it is could hear the larger conversation, could hear the larger issues. Because sometimes people like shut down. I think in Dominique's play, there was something about ethnocultural. That. And so like there is something about people sort of identifying and hearing certain things from a certain group of people. And I felt like each one of these writers would be able to speak not only to their particular experience, but to a larger demographic. So I'm very pleased, and I think these people are awesome. And I'm honored that they said yes. I'm honored. I'm honored that all of you are here. And I just think this is a great start to a really important conversation about the impact and the underbelly of privilege in this country. And I don't like talking about race so much because I feel like even in Dominique's piece, it sort of cuts through race and starts talking about sort of privilege consciousness, you know. So I just think it's just so many things to talk about. So I'm very pleased. I'm very pleased.
So maybe...
Can I add one thing? I just want to commend Keith because I think that sometimes, you know, as artists or whatever, we sort of wait for someone to ask or grant us license or, you know what I mean? And he didn't wait. And it was interesting to hear you, Dominique, say, well, I was going to do something. And I think that it's inspiring to me because you were like, okay, I'm going to make this thing happen. And that's, I mean...
I'm a man of action. I don't like talking too much. There's so many, you know, as you say, like there's so many of us who sit and wait to be qualified and anointed or given permission. And this is 2014 almost. I mean, the planet is heating up. Folks, get busy. I mean, there's no time to be waiting for anybody. So, yes. So, yeah, thank you.
I also just want to say that Keith is an amazing writer in his own right.
Another comment from the panel before we go to question. Anything you feel you want to say or?
I wanted to say one thing. Oh,
yes.
I'm sorry. I wanted to say one thing about ethnocultural empathy, since you brought it up. I didn't know that word before I wrote this play. And I was like, oh, there got to be a word, right, for this thing that I want to talk about. I'm going to Wikipedia it. And I found this word, and I was like, this is it. You know, I had to search for a minute, but I said, oh, this is the word. Yeah, I knew there had to be some form, or, you know, I was going to make it up, but I thought that idea of people, because we make up words, but that idea that people respond to people from a similar background, you know? And I thought that's, to me, the seed of frankly, what each one of us has written, you know, has a lot to do with the ethnocultural empathy in this case, you know. So I just want to throw that out there, y'all. You can find things on the internet. Anyway.
Brad, maybe we can put up some audience lights also so we see each other even better. And we have also a mic, and you will go around and show. So if you have a question, now's the moment. And I'm going to just give some numbers. Maybe put your hand up. And so this is 1, 2, something else? 3. So let's start with this. So 1, 2, 3.
Hi, everyone. My name is Joanna, and thank you all. It was just amazing. Before I asked the question, I just kept thinking throughout the whole, you know, like through all the stories, I just kept thinking how necessary these stories are. Because they're so now, like things that are happening now. And I feel like we tend to, for me at least, like when I think of stories from theater to TV and films, like the stories revolve around the past, the future, not so much on the things that are happening now. And except when we watch the news or we, you know, read a story on these things that are happening now, but not through the arts. And I think, like, speaking about race and thinking about these kinds of things that are happening all the time are so necessary. So thank you all. And my question is to the playwrights and perhaps the directors too, or the playwrights, like as you guys were writing the story, like did you guys learn anything new about yourselves in relationship to race?
Oh, she's bringing it. Okay. I can't hear anything. Okay. I know that the process that we went through was interesting because, I mean, I love to do research and you know, I had been writing these plays about specifically Palestinians, you know, in 67 and in 82 and 2003. And so, like, I'm one of those people, like, I love to let it percolate, and then I love to find out what I don't know. In the case of this, it was like where do I even start? Like, encountering this story, and it actually felt far more massive, far bigger than anything else that I had started to research. And the way we wrote was we kept going back and forth with like, oh, look at this article. Oh, look at this Malcolm X on YouTube in 19 da, da, da. And finally I said, you know, we're gonna have to write. And I think we were just so overwhelmed with the enormity of it. And it's not so interesting. It's so sad that this is one story. This is just one story. And this morning in rehearsal, it came up that there had been another story that week, and there are so many stories. So I guess I didn't really answer your question, but just that I realized that it's like you think it's this small story, but it opens up a whole window into a whole bunch of other things. So,
yeah. For me, I just struggled with what was the representation of race that I was going to be putting out there, and how can I be conscious of that, and how can I keep it dynamic? And if all of these people up there, if this is a chance to represent blackness, whiteness, Koreanness, et cetera, like I had in my mind what the races of these people were. And so initially I started out giving them their actual races. And then I found myself second guessing everything I say, to be like, well, is that racist? It could be. Like, you know, just going back and forth. And so for me, it was just, you know, another journey on unpacking institutionalized racism and just trying to see what is the thing that I want to say, and then taking the risk of, if I say it, what happens if I show, if it is a black man and it's his penis, do we then think that this is what black men do? Like I was going through the same thing that I put in the play while trying to represent it. So, you know, I only learned that you just have to keep going, that that's the beauty's in the struggle, but that there's no answer, no end. You can't get cured.
There's something interesting that happened this morning when we were working on Dom's piece, which was the night vision. For me personally, not only as an artist but as a woman, is that, you know, I totally was in I found myself in the shoes of Heather's character as the woman, saying, well, no, I'm a black woman, I'm liberal, but yet I have probably been complicit of profiling at one sense or another. So although I thought I was on one side of the ethnocultural McGraw thing, word you taught us all, you know, is that privilege lays itself on so many different layers. And so as we were talking this morning, there's this idea of like first world privilege that we don't talk about as Americans, because we sit in it every day and we benefit from it. You know, this idea of educational privilege, this idea of class privilege, you know, so the layers go on and on and on. So really when we start to have this, it's not as simple as just having a conversation about race. It can't be, because if we're just talking, we're really not unpacking anything. So that was interesting this morning, just to share a little bit.
Should we go to the second question?
Sorry, that was horrible. I just coughed right before you gave me the mic. My name is Abby. And it's interesting, I think.
Maybe say what you do.
Oh, yeah, I'm a literary manager at Atlantic Theater Company. And I'm really thrilled to be here, and I'm thrilled that so many people are here. And what's interesting is that my original question was very similar to yours, and so I think there's a thing happening where we're considering these questions. So I'll adjust my question a little bit, which is that when you first got this assignment, all of you, writer, director, Keith, yourself, did you set out with one idea and find as you went through the process that it became something else? Did it change somehow while you were exploring these various ideas? And I also just want to add that I appreciate the various approaches and the particular things that you were exploring as part of this larger, very, very complex issue that we're discussing.
I want to say a little bit about that. For me, when I sort of reached out to all of these writers, and I called Piercarlo Talente. I always mention him. I don't know why I'm always mentioning this man. Piercarlo Talente at the Center Theater Group in Los Angeles. I asked him to recommend a couple of writers because I was having trouble identifying white male playwrights. I know many of them, but I don't know many of them personally. And the ones that I sort of came into theater with coming out of grad school, we support each other from a distance, and I think I support them more than they support me, and that's a whole nother conversation. So I kind of reached out to Pierre, because Pierre knows everyone. And so he mentioned Dan O'Brien, who I'd heard of, and I liked his work. And then Pierre was suggesting a Latino playwright. So then I was like, oh my God, I didn't think of a Latino playwright. But I have so many Latino friends. That's weird. What is that about? And then I started thinking, like, I don't really think I'm ever having any racial conversations with Latinos that I know. So then I realized that there was some divide between me and the Latino artistic community, even though I know them. I was like, why aren't we talking to each other? So I was really challenged by that. And I was really happy that Dan had already teamed up with Quetzal Flores, who's an amazing musician, Chicano musician. But still, I felt like that wasn't me. That was Dan bringing someone in. It wasn't my impulse. So I was challenged. I was challenged by that. So.
In the spirit of challenged, I always find myself challenged as a non-American but Black Caribbean growing up in Europe. You know, and it's funny because it's so universal, but the discussions that are going on back home right now are really when we show examples of racism in the Netherlands, oftentimes, and as of late in discussions that are going on in terms of Black Pete, it's often say, well, that's an American perspective. And that's so interesting because I'm here feeling very universal about the work that's been going on.
Like Pete is somehow kind of a Black Santa, to simplify a little bit,
yes.
who comes earlier on December
right.
6th.
Yes, so there's two versions. There's Santa Claus for Christmas, and then there's Santa Claus allegedly from Spain, but he's really from Istanbul. And then he has in history, so he comes to the houses, he drops gifts for the kids, and he has these helpers. Back in the day, Moors, but also Black people. So they have all these songs about Santa coming with his slaves to the houses and dropping all these gifts. So this has been celebrated for ages in the Netherlands. So 3 years ago, there was this whole uproar. So my generation and the generation after me is actually really standing up, and there's this whole campaign about Black Pete is racism. Because it's basically white people in blackface with the afros and the earrings and the red lipstick. Google it, it's crazy. And I never know how to explain it to people in America. But so anyway, I'm always challenged when it comes to race and versus being in America, working on these pieces about events that happen in America, but in my gut and in my spirit feeling that this is universal. But when I go back home and I'm going to experience it in a couple of weeks, it's always going to be, but that's an American perspective. So that's kind of interesting to experience.
Dominique?
I'll just tackle it real quick and just say, I recently, during the writing of this play, around the time of writing this play, I've been hanging around I have a lot of friends of all hues, and I was hanging around my close friends of my dark-skinned Black women sisters, right? And I've hung around them all my life. My husband is a dark-skinned man. I even married a dark-skinned man. And I was hanging around my friends, and when they're around each other, I realized, oh, I'm never around them when they're all around each other. And they recently told me that they didn't think I knew I was light-skinned. And I was like, what? What does that even mean? And they're like, you don't play into your light-skin privilege. And I was like, what the hell is light-skin privilege? Oh, we got that? And I just started, and when they're around each other, like they start talking about light skin a lot. And I was like, damn, y'all are really, this is a thing, ain't it? Oh. And you for a while, I go, damn, I thought we was over this. I didn't know that we was having this problem. And then I go, oh, of course I thought that we were over it. It's not my problem. I'm actually not being impacted by this like you guys are, right? So like, I realized something in the process of this. I was like, oh, you know, Jesus, I'm thinking like this isn't an issue because it's a privilege. I have light skin privilege. And that's the point of privilege, right? That you can like live in and you ain't got to know. You don't even have to be aware of a problem because it's not impacting you. And then I thought, oh, well, then that also means that just because I think I'm not using it, I don't delight in it, I don't stretch out in it and be like, look at me, I'm light-skinned. That does not actually mean that I don't have it. And that has been the revelation for me in the process of this, writing this play, actually, you know.
I love that point.
Who was the question?
Oh,
Yeah,
are we moving on?
Oh, I'm sorry, excuse me.
I'm sorry, I just want to jump in real quick, and thank you for bringing up colorism, because I feel like the huge challenge that we all share, that I'm kind of like using the Blind Spot Project to grapple with is, how do we, once we recognize all of these different issues, and there's no one issue, they're all connected, how do you assert yourself in a way that you can move forward and address these issues? And I just want to submit that the greatest work that I feel like I'm doing is in my own home, in my own self, recognizing when I'm actually being the light-skinned one that doesn't realize that I have this privilege, when I recognize that I have fears about black men, or that I have fears about being perceived as a black man, and that still is adding to the continuation of this colorism. So the challenge is huge, and we all have it. And I love the fact that we're like making this micro step, which has effects in the ripple for a larger movement. But it is really our own work within ourselves that is the greatest work in my mind.
Thank you so much. So let's say, hey, come on, here, you, and then 3, 4, 5. Yeah.
Hi, my name's Angela. I'm an actor. And I think my question has probably been touched on, so I'm going to ask you to expound in any way that you can, any playwrights up there. It was initially specifically for Tala, because you were the first person, I think, to mention it. You said that this play was probably the hardest play that you have written. And I wanted to know more about that. And then also, now that you and Mona have written the play, how does that impact you, particularly since you work with students? And any other playwrights, if you feel like you had a similar epiphany in that way, where this was the hardest piece that you've had to work on, you know, what have you learned in addition to things that you've already talked about?
So my family is Palestinian originally, and I think that part of what that has meant for me is sort of the constant sense and awareness of what it means to come from a community where loss is very much a part of everyday life, right? Loss is not something that is strange, it's almost more normal than not loss, whatever that is. And so I think that this play, or this assignment, since Keith was the one giving out the assignments actually, touched on really all of the things that matter to me and move me. Children, inequality, who has access, who doesn't have access, who is protected, who is not protected, who is worthy of having a voice, who is not worthy of having a voice, what bodies do we care about and why. And so trying to sort of reckon with all of those things around a very real, actual thing that happened, right? Not just sort of some conceptual conversation, just brought up a lot for me. And it brought up a lot for me as I said, as an educator, as a New Yorker, as a Palestinian person, as an American. I mean, I want to say something about the question of like race and all of the other parts of this. I agree, obviously, that it's not just about race, but I think that the experience of Black people in America is a unique thing, right? I mean, Paul Gilroy just wrote this amazing article about 12 Years a Slave, where he talks about how in America we think of slavery as being almost prehistory, right? You know, there's slavery, and then there's the Civil War, and there's the Emancipation Proclamation, and then history begins. And I don't agree with that. You know, I mean, I think that this kind of reckoning and this kind of conversation is the only way that we can start to heal. I think it was in Marcus's piece, right? You talk about the sickness of slave guilt, right? And I think we don't feel, I think we're sick, and I don't think we feel guilty enough. So that's why it was hard.
If I could, for me, the thing that I've been trying to figure out over the last year is just the notion of privilege. And what I didn't understand before is I thought that privilege was static and that it just was sort of handed down. And if you put the two of us next to each other, you can kind of stack out the privilege and be like, well, you know, I'm white, you're male, and kind of like, sort of like a Tetris game of how privilege works. And so what I found so limiting about that is that I would see someone and think, okay, I must have more privilege than you, or you must have more privilege than me. And I just kept getting into trouble, trying to figure out what are the rules? Who's, you know, it was constantly just trying to check myself and be like, what am I doing? Why am I behaving like this? What am I projecting onto you, and what am I picking up that's not there? And what's the unsaid thing? So when I started to realize and think about privilege as fluid, that if I walk into a room in which I am the only one of my gender, then my privilege drops. If I walk into a room and everyone is my gender but not my race, like just all those, the matrix of that, but how even if Marcus and I are having a conversation, if our conversation is about cars and I know nothing about cars, then his status goes up. And it's not about gender or class or like that. It just, that moment to moment privilege is dynamic. And so in thinking that, I wanted to explore that in my play where, you know, the three youth arrive and suddenly it shifts because there's three of them and they know each other, but they're younger, they're less educated. You know, it's like all these things that we don't know. So for me, the play is a continuing exploration of how does privilege work? And it ultimately, it comes down to kind of who's holding the microphone.
Right, okay. I was gonna actually.
Okay,
yeah.
Marcus.
Can you all hear me? Okay. So this writing this play was very hard for me, and poor Keith, I think he was emailing me every day, brother, where is the play? And you know, I always have the problem is, you know, the gift from God that I have is I actually always overwrite, and here I had not one word for forever. And my process is I always take an image because I'm a very visual thinker, and I make Nilo Cruz taught me you get a magic box and you put objects in the box and the play comes out of the images. And I've always done that. And usually I'm procrastinating, watching TV or something, and then a week when it's due, I just go, where's the box? And then pull it out. I couldn't do it. I had Trayvon Martin all over my room. I couldn't do it. Dred Scott, I couldn't do it. Medgar Evers, I just kept bringing all these black men who were murdered, and they would not speak to me. They would not speak. And it drove me crazy. I've never had that happen to me in my life. And what happened was I was doing a show in Minneapolis, and I was stressed, and just got another email from Keith. I went into this, always very nice about it, always very nice. Brother, I hope you're okay. Where's the play? Always very nice. And so I'm in this, working with these young people, and this incredible young Filipina woman said that working in theater saved her life because she did not like anything about herself. And everybody was a mess. We all were crying, and she was talking about how, you know, the word, and I was just feeling her presence and her energy in the room. And these young black men were in the room and talking about theater, and all this great stuff happened. And then the teaching artists, they all left, and the teaching artists, they start talking to me, and it came out in the most subtle way. They said, we love these students, but the pants, we can't handle the sagging of the pants. We can't do it. And I said, it's just cloth. And the lady said, it's underwear. And I said, it's just cloth, though. It's just cloth. She said, we can't handle it. We tell them to pull their pants up, and we can't do it. We can't, literally, they couldn't handle it. And I kept saying, it's just cloth, it's just cloth. And then what I learned from that experience is, we're not listening to these young black men. We're not listening. Because they're telling us it's just pants. They're not saying it like that, but that's how they identify it, and it's just pants. In the 70s, it was bell bottoms. You know, afros. It's just pants. And so what I want to give you all as a gift is we have to start listening to these men. Because they're talking. I can't hear Trayvon because I have not been listening. And so I just want to give that to you. We have to start listening.
Thank you, Marcus. You, and then afterwards you. But you first. Take a microphone, please. 1 second. Yeah. It's being recorded, that's why.
Keith, in other words, part of this whole experience tonight was just people sitting up there. When you go to LA and the Goodman and these other theaters, are you going or is someone going that's going to do a talk back afterwards? Or any of these playwrights going? How are you going to keep the conversation going, in other words, besides the plays?
Well, part of the
I'm sorry.
the part of the charge that I'm giving the theaters is to produce and present however they like and however they wish, and they're responsible for finding the directors, the cast. I give them the option if they want to bring the playwrights out, they can. It's not mandatory. But the most important thing that I charge them is to make sure there's a social justice component to the reading or presentation. And I do that, one, because I feel like it's important that someone like, you know, Frank and Russell is here to sort of help bring the right language so people can sort of feel at ease and talk to each other. But also I don't want the weight of privilege and race to be on the theaters themselves, because that's just way too, that's just way too much. So to answer your question, theaters can do what they want. They have to do what they want. So they don't have to bring me out or anything.
But the plan is, yes, that's what you wish for happening.
I don't necessarily, no, I don't want to be, I feel like, and someone was mentioning today, like the possibility of the plays traveling, like with the same cast. I think that's a great idea. Find the right producers, make that happen. However, I feel like what'll happen in Chicago is going to be different here because the demographic and the narrative in Chicago is different than what's happening in Detroit, or Little Rock, Arkansas, or Oakland, California, or Seattle, Washington, or even the east side of Toronto, Canada. So I really want the theaters and the communities to have their own conversations with each other. And if everybody's talking globally or nationally, then, you know, we start a little revolution and get it all changed.
Next question over there.
Thank you very much, Frank. I want to just congratulate Keith on a great program and all the panelists. I think you guys did a great job. And my good friend here, Frank. But I just want us also, in the spirit of the theme, maybe just have a 30-second for Nelson Mandela. Thank you.
I'm assuming everyone knew that Nelson Mandela passed away today.
Today, yeah. So this is a good. Thank you for. It is all connected. I think one question here and then there. We.
Over here.
Well, I'd like to thank the university for providing a place for the premiere of this wonderful work, and thank the artists, the actors, and the writers for this wonderful theatrical experience tonight. With regard to what the gentleman in the first row down there said, I was thinking about the conversation that this theatrical experience promotes, and was wondering if there were some ways that the scripts might be made available as a collection so that those who can't attend the theatrical performance in the universities or elsewhere in their own homes might have access to them. The Green Space recently broadcast on New York Public Radio the August Wilson Century. And that was a fabulous thing. And it was accessible online. So I wonder if New York Public Radio might be an opportunity to bring the actors together and record this live in the studio, perhaps after the performance in New York, so that people around the world can tune in and receive this as a conversation starter.
That is a great suggestion, recommendation. One, I know Arthur, who curates some of the things at Green Space, so I'm going to actually reach out to him tonight. Secondly, there is conversation already about publishing from a couple of different sources, and there's also talks about a film version, but we will talk about that later.
Maybe one last question. Then we still have a small reception here. Now you can hopefully ask all the questions you would like. So we need a microphone over here for the last question.
Hi, Simone Missick, actor. Thank you to all of you. That was brilliant and amazing. And to the actors, you were wonderful. Two-part question. You're in a room of very educated and enlightened and interested people who wanted to hear these issues being brought to light. But in light of the 3 male students who filed a racial discrimination citation against their professor, how do you feel like these stories can reach those who don't recognize their own privilege, or they don't have the opportunity to have that racism or discrimination held up to their faces? The second question, with this being a 10-minute, 1-act limitation, I guess, do any of you feel the need or the want or the desire to expand these stories and make them full-length plays?
Yeah, they're keeping them all.
Thank you for the question about, what was I going to say?
Brilliant.
Who sees it?
Including people, yes. How do you create a shift in someone who isn't leaning toward social justice or awareness or any of that stuff? I think that that is definitely important, and I think it happens on a small scale. And I think this is a great time to talk about how we need to talk further about the role of whiteness in the paradigm of race. Because like Dominique was saying with that word, if you look like me, I'm gonna hear you a little bit better. So it's important for people who wanna ally themselves with, a greater cause, like maybe equality amongst humans, they're gonna need to take the lead in a lot of those conversations where those people are far into whatever they're into, to be led back into something that's a little bit more equitable. And these people that are up here and you people that are out there, we are also the people that sort of set the bar for the fashions and what's cool to do and what we should be writing plays about. And so this is the work that is going to speak to those people. But I don't think that it makes any sense to believe that if you get the Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan to come to the theater, they're gonna tear up because they saw the Trayvon Martin plays. But if you get their...
That would look cool under the little...
that it would just be like a wet streak on their... But if you have their daughter or the boyfriend of their daughter or whoever see the play and they have the gumption to address just that one thing at the dinner table, that's how the shift is going to happen, or at least in my mind.
I just want to say too that I think a lot of, I don't want to diss any regional theater, but it's a common paradigm in regional theater that it's like Christmas Carol, Shakespeare, which is fine, right? And then they'll be like, there's one play by one person of color. And they might be like,
or a woman.
And or a woman, right? They're like, well, those can't, well, we got a woman and a person of color. We cancel it out. But like,
One person
and I'm not, theaters are trying. They're trying to reach out. So that's actually a fantastic question. I was working on a play in Orange County. South Coast Rep is like, we want to get to know people in our community. And I mean, I was going to like what's called Little Arabia, and like these baklava shops, right? And it's like, these guys are not going to South Coast Rep. But I think we can't, why aren't they? Right, no, I mean, I don't think we can't give up on that. I mean, for me as a writer, I always want to write, I always think of my father, who is educated, but he's only seen the plays I was in, that I made him suffer through, and then the times I've bought him tickets, and I never want to leave him out. He should be part of the conversation. So I think it's very important that we say, wait a minute, who is part of this conversation? Who are we reaching out to? And I love your idea, I don't know the gentleman in the back, about having those ideas about how to distribute material. I think like, let's do it. I mean, I don't have those ideas, but those sound really good to me,
I'm just going to put my educator hat on for a minute and answer the question in a little bit of a different way, right? Which is to say that I think that what you're talking about really is about the acquisition of a certain set of skills, right, that enables one to engage in this conversation in a way that is productive, in a way that is honest, in a way that expresses empathy. And I would say that the biggest contribution, right, in whatever way is appropriate for each of us that we can make towards that is to reclaim public education in this country, right? I mean, that is the space where young people ought to be acquiring the skills that they need to be engaged citizens in a democracy. And obviously I mean democracy there with a lowercase d. Excuse me?
A big C.
Yes, that's right. Because, I think that the Gandhian mandate about, if you want to change something, you have to start with the children is just true. I agree. I think that to some extent, right, our responsibility as adults who are in this room together is to fortify each other, right, and to sort of create a critical mass among people who are already there. But there is a much more radical, much more fundamental thing that we can do, right, to shift the whole damn conversation, right? I mean, there's a 10th grade class, right, in a school where they're using The Help to teach American history. That's the book they're using. They're using the book The Help. That's how we're teaching history to our young people, right? So I will step off of my educator soapbox
Maybe
now.
go to the question, will anybody write a full play?
Yeah, I'm going to tackle your other one about writing the full, which I think could also answer your first one.
Yeah.
Which is, I'm not so interested in actually expanding this story. Sometimes, the story comes to you, like I told it the way I was supposed to tell it, and that journey is done. But these kind of stories that inspire these conversations will be a part of my canon, will be a part of my legacy of writing, right? And so I feel that is because I am not just trying to reach the typical off-Broadway audience that subscribes and goes and sees plays already. It's not that I'm not trying to reach them. They're just not all I'm trying to reach. And so I think to open the doors up to others and get these conversations started, I'm going to put the work out that I think speaks to the others. And then what will happen is something is similarly happening to a play of mine that's running right now, which is that, we're not getting our normal subscriber base. But then you're getting like, all the other people, though. Yeah, and so I'll just say you can't really actually, but that's not just like, I put work up and everybody comes. Like, you got a campaign for people to come, and then, I say you can't go to somebody's house. You can't send a flyer and tell somebody, come to my house and eat my food. You don't even know if I can cook. Like, why would you leave your house and your food that you can probably really cook well and come to my neighborhood and my community, eat my food that's not that good? I've given you no samples. And so I need to go to your house, offer you my really good food, and be like, yeah, you like that? You come get more this way. And so I think that we have a problem, and it is a privilege problem, that I think that we think that people are supposed to come to us. And and that people are supposed to spend their money to come to see us. And we ain't got to invest nothing in their community. And that's a theater nationwide problem that I think can be rectified by writers writing the work, and then also calling their audiences to come and bring your friends.
And if you haven't seen.
So, again, thank you all for coming, and let's have a celebration. Again, I think a big applause for the actors, but also the playwrights, and for Keith, and you have the last word.
Yes, I just want to say, well, three things. One, please check out Dominique Morisseau's Sunset Baby that was just extended. At the Labyrinth Theater, go online, you will find it, Google it, you know, do some flyers out there. Secondly, Facing Our Truth, you will be able to see another version, I think a more extended version, at the National Black Theater in their 45th season. And I think it's February 4th they begin. So go to their website, nationalblacktheater.org, and you get more information. Look out for other theaters. February 6th. And just a part B of that is several theaters in the country are actually presenting and are reading and are producing Facing Our Truth on February 5th, which is Trayvon's birthday, in celebration of his birthday. And lastly, thank you.
Yeah.